Hello and welcome to the Federal. As the Election Commission prepares to conduct polls in Jammu and Kashmir after a gap of 10 years, we talked to Dr. Ellora Puri, political science professor at the Jammu and Kashmir University, to understand the value of return of elections. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Puri. Ma'am, my first question is that the election process is returning to Jammu and Kashmir after it lost its statehood, abrogation of 370, and it became a union territory. So, what are the main issues in the minds of people at this time?
See, it's been nearly 10 years since we had elections, popular elections. So, last elections which happened were 2014. Given that we are a democracy, the fact of the matter is any kind of governance would require representatives in the middle. And we haven't had representative government for a very, very long time. So what has happened is almost anything and everything in terms of various issues that have arisen in the last 10 years haven't really been addressed, in terms of what the population needs, because the population hasn't been able to inform the representatives, the people who are governing, about the issues which concern them, right? So this is something that the population in the state, not the state, the union territory now, has been looking forward to for a very long time, because they feel their concerns are not being taken into consideration. And of course, after 10 years, this is, the various issues that you can see, which are informing, this election essentially. The first one, of course, is going to be in terms of how the whosoever gets elected is going to have, how that government basically negotiates with the central government, in terms of trying to renegotiate this relationship between the center and the union territory government, and trying to create a new kind of mechanism by virtue of which you would be able to inform the needs of the people, because this is something totally new. This is altogether new. We really don't know what kind of governance mechanisms would come into place. But of course, the major demand at this point in time is that the statehood should be restored. Statehood should be restored, and this is something that almost any and every region that you go to, any district that you go to in the Union Territory of J&K, you'll hear from anybody and everybody. And the fact that you need to have more representation, you need to have elections happening as they're happening elsewhere in the country, and be given more powers, unlike what the Union Territory status promises the representatives. So, the basic thing, statehood. Second, that not powers, not the kind of powers that the union territory representatives enjoy, but more powers than that, and not the Puducherry or the Delhi model being implemented here, but a proper statehood that you see across the country, which is implemented there, and people are looking forward to this. People are looking forward to this. People have been talking about elections for a very long time, and they want to, have elected representatives in place, so that their, problems can be addressed. People who are in the governance mechanisms understand the problems better, of course, because what you have at this point in time is bureaucratic Raj, essentially. And most of these bureaucrats are coming, the topmost echelons of the bureaucracy are basically from outside. They're not from inside J&K cadre per se, most of them. And, the LG and the coterie around him, many of them, come from UP essentially. So there is this feeling that these people really do not understand the local realities, and those local realities, if they need to be taken into consideration, what you need is representative government. And so there is, people are looking forward to it, but there is somewhat of, it comes along with skepticism, because people are not sure how this is going to function, given that it's union territory status and it's not a statehood.
Ma'am, you mentioned about statehood. Now, BJP paid the price for this demand in Ladakh when it lost the Lok Sabha election. A similar demand is now rising in Kashmir and also in Jammu, where BJP is in a much more comfortable position. How difficult is it going to be for BJP to manage its own constituency?
This is the first thing that struck people in 2019. The removal of Article 370, or the downgradation of Article 370, or the removal of Article 35A, yes. But along with that, people in the state, erstwhile state, one of the major things which struck them was the fact that the statehood was taken away, right? The fact that they were, downgraded into a union territory. So this is something which is, integral to emotional politics of this region at this point in time. Whatever BJP might say, it's cadre here in the state, especially in the Jammu region, they recognizes this, right? So even if they do not have, even if nationally, the national leadership, even if the national leadership feels that statehood should not be restored, but the local leadership recognizes that the sentiment is for statehood in the state, right? In Jammu and Kashmir. If they are going to say that then the statehood is not going to be given to Jammu and Kashmir, then it's going to be a problem electorally for them too. So you'll never hear them say that statehood is not going to be restored, right? Even at the national level, whether it's the Prime Minister, whether it's the Home Minister, none of them has ever said that the statehood is not going to be restored, right? So till date, almost all of them are saying that statehood is going to be restored. Ladakh is a different matter altogether, because Ladakh is in terms of population, it's a very small region. Of course, in terms of territory, it's a large geography, but when you're looking at population, it's a very, very small region. So there is this practicality about it, whether it should be given statehood or whether it should get Schedule 5 status, right? So that's a different ball game altogether, right? But when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, this is a large region in terms of population, in terms of geography, both of them, right? Just like you have statehood elsewhere, when it comes to this large population, this diverse population, along with the geography that you're looking at, almost any other entity that you would be looking at has been given statehood, right? So withdrawal of statehood is something which actually has hit the population much more than, I would say, even the downgradation of Article 370, right? So BJP cannot, your question, coming back to your question, BJP cannot actually come and say that they do not believe in statehood, or that statehood should not be restored. So BJP would not say that. It's going to affect them electorally if they were to say that.
The Lok Sabha election was historic this time, firstly because the voting percentage was nearly 59, and which is huge, and also because two dominant leaders, Mr. Omar Abdullah and Ms. Mehbooba Mufti, lost the polls. Do you think the people of Jammu Kashmir are trying to send a message through their electoral choices?
Yes, of course, but there are local nuances to this too, because where Mehbooba Mufti was standing, the seat that she was standing on, she was actually a weaker candidate, right? She was actually a weaker candidate, and the person who won the elections, if you knew the local dynamics here in terms of community, percentages, etc., one foresaw that Mia Altaf would win that elections, right? But the more important one was Engineer Rashid winning, right? So that was a more important one, and you can easily see that the Kashmiri population, right? We are talking about Kashmiri population here, the valley-based population. They were sending a message, right? And that was a seat in which you actually had people, a people's conference, Sajad Loan's party, which was supposed to be an important player, Loan's party, with the central leadership, right? The BJP leadership. He was seen to be a proxy of the central leadership. So because of that, what you actually saw was a very interesting dynamics happening there. So it was a vote against, of course, Sajad Loan's party also, and the vote got divided. But given the fact that Engineer Rashid won with such a large margin, you can easily see, and given the fact that BJP claims, the central leadership claims, the government claims, and the election commission also claims that it was a fair elections. So you cannot really say that it was the separatists which forced force the people to come and vote for Indian election, right? So that was a strong message which was being sent. Basically a message of disaffection, basically a message which basically talks about the fact that they do not believe in the kind of politics which has been undertaken both by the national government as well as the local leadership somewhere in when it comes to Kashmir. So yeah, it was definitely a message.
Now, the National Conference has promised the return of Article 370 and implementation of the resolution on autonomy passed by the Assembly earlier. Do you think these promises are possible given the political situation?
Uh, the practical reality is that national conference cannot shy away from speaking about them, right? But it also recognizes that when it comes to Article 370 as well as the autonomy resolution, they might pass certain resolutions in the assembly once they're elected, but the final say has to be national government, right? It has to be in the parliament or the Supreme Court, right? Either of the two, right? So the autonomy resolution, it has to go via Parliament. But when it comes to Article 370, what they keep on saying is, what National Conference keeps on saying is that they'll approach the Supreme Court again and see whether the Supreme Court can rethink its judgment, right? But NC cannot do without saying that, right? NC has to talk about it. Article 370 is part of the history. Article 370, the manner in which it was removed, is something that the whole leadership stands against, and of course that is one of the main planks. So they cannot do without it, but practically the decision has to be taken by the national government. So yeah.
Ma'am, this is the first election after Jammu Kashmir became a union territory. Now, what will be the role of the chief minister? If we take the example of Delhi, then there's been a constant clash between lieutenant governor and the chief minister and the state government also. So, what will be the role of the chief minister?
See, this is what everybody is dreading. That's the reason why I said, initially I said there is a huge amount of skepticism about what is going to happen after this, right? So you're going to be elected, and what has happened is over the last 2 months, I don't know whether you've been following, politics here, but lots of those powers, which are usually vested with the elected government, they have been taken away, and they've been put under the office of LG, the lieutenant governor, right? So transfers of bureaucrats and things like that, right? And this is exactly the point of contention between the Delhi CM and the LG, right? Of course, we don't know how it is going to pan out, because this is something which is totally new. It's something which hasn't happened till date anywhere, for that matter. You haven't had a full state being reduced to a union territory, this is what most political leadership, as well as I would say the population of the state, is dreading, that they do not want to be reduced to a Delhi. They don't want to be reduced to a Puducherry, right? They've enjoyed statehood all this while, and the so-called autonomous statehood, which was considered to be more than the rest of the states. This is something which, as I said, the leadership as well as the population is dreading. So we really don't know how it's going to pan out. But let's hope for the best. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
Ma'am, my last question is that BJP decided not to contest elections in Kashmir Valley during the Lok Sabha polls. Now, do you think this election is a referendum on Article 370 and statehood, and BJP will have to face the elections in Kashmir Valley?
Calling something a referendum, especially elections to legislative assembly of union territory, would be too much of a stretch, I feel, at this point in time. I think people are more interested as I said initially itself, people are more interested in governance, right? The fact that you have this large distance between the population and the bureaucracy, and bureaucracy is essentially, it's being run by diktat at this point in time, right? they might be undertaking some certain very good measures, but most of the times they're not informed by information from the ground. They're not informed by any form of understanding of the ground level realities, right? So this is something which people at this point in time, they're just concerned that they need a voice. They need a responsible government. They need somebody who can represent them, their interests, and their, at this point in time, because of the fact that there has been this 10-year distance between the governance mechanisms and the state, and the population. The feeling is that, at this point in time, we just need a bridge. We need a bridge, and the bridge which could address the problems that we're facing at this point in time, right? So I really don't think that they're thinking in terms of this being a referendum, and I think also there is a kind of an inertia also when it comes to things like Article 370, etc., because people just want to move ahead at this point in time, because they feel that if they are going to be talking about Article 370 or its restoration, then perhaps other things might get stopped, right? So they just want to move forward at this point in time. They're not thinking of it as a referendum.